Call this work session to order. We'll start with attendance. Mr. Constant.
Mr. Constant.
Forrest Dunbar.
Dave Traney.
Pete Peterson.
Ira Perman.
Dean Dietz, Assembly Council.
Okay, great. All right, so we have before us an ordinance, the Anchorage Assembly, establishing a new Downtown Anchorage Renaissance Commission and amending Anchorage Municipal Code Charter 4.6. So we have an S version that's being brought to us. Chris, if you want to talk a little bit about it, and then we also have Chris. Oh, I'm sorry, Ira. Okay, sorry, Ira. So we also have Mr. Schutte with the mayor's office. Is there anyone from the administration who wants to talk about this at all?
No, just here to listen.
Okay. Okay. So why don't Ira? Why don't you present the big idea, and then we'll get into specifics once the S version comes back.
Sure, thank you. Thank you all very much. As of Tuesday night, I became a lame duck assembly member. I want to thank you all for having given me the opportunity to sit here for now 4 weeks going toward the 7. When I signed on, or when you were interviewing me, I said there were 3 things I wanted to bring attention to. And one of them was the status of downtown and the need for there to be sort of all hands on deck effort to improve it. I'd like to talk about that in the context for this ordinance proposed here. I have worked in the downtown area since 1979, a long time, over 30 years. I worked on First Avenue in the Railroad Depot. I worked on 3rd Avenue in the John Thomas Community Center. Worked on 4th Avenue for a long time in the Old City Hall, right across from what was then the downtown building in the 555 Club. Worked, of course, at the Performing Arts Center between 5th and 6th. That's where the work that I took place. And I worked on 7th Avenue in the Color Art Building right next door to the Atwood Center. So it's a long time in a lot of places in downtown. And even as an assembly aide working with Ernie Hall, going downtown for the work that was done here in this building, kept me pretty current on how the place is functioning and looking. Took about pretty much 2 years away from downtown after working with Ernie. And then circumstances came along that in my job at the Atwood Foundation, I had occasion to work with, do site visits with some of our grantees. And particularly I want to talk about the Anchorage Downtown Partnership, which is one of our grantees. I had the opportunity it was late winter before the snow had melted, and the former executive director of the Downtown Partnership gave me a tour of that particular quadrant of downtown, meaning where they are located, which is the old post office mall, next to the Sunshine Plaza Mall, which is strictly across the street from where Cyrano's Theater used to be. And it was a Tuesday lunchtime. We were having a lunch meeting. And the first thing I remember as I pulled up was, I could get a parking space right near where we're having lunch. Didn't used to be able to do that. Used to have to go around the block a few times and park a few blocks away. No problem getting a parking space. We went to have lunch, and it turned out there was only one other person in the place besides us. This is a Tuesday, business day, downtown. And that was the sort of the introduction of what Jamie was trying to show me, which was that particular quadrant, and I think by extrapolation other parts of downtown, are having some significant issues with retaining tenants. The Post Office Mall is reported to be 90% vacant. Sunshine Plaza Mall, 60% vacant. The Loft, which is just on the other side of C Street, I don't know if it's vacant, but I believe it's, someone described it as in play, meaning it's looking for a new owner. Cyrano's at the corner of 3rd and D. They moved. They moved over to the east end of town across from Yes Bistro. I know the owner there is looking desperately to find a tenant in there. There's a sense that I have, coming back to downtown and revisiting it more, that downtown is, at least, let's put it this way, from roughly E Street that way toward the east, it's being neglected. it feels neglected. It feels like we're just ignoring the fact that this issue's over there. And whatever those issues are, they are moving their way slowly but surely westward. Used to be I felt pretty comfortable walking around downtown as far, over to Cordova. Not so much, watch the tourists. They don't go anywhere east of T Street. They turn around. It's just not a comfortable place. It's outside of the summer tourism season, when the place, like on a day like today, is gorgeous. You want to be downtown. There's lots of people, lots of activity, lots of flowers. The other 7 months of the year, this is not a particularly wonderful place to come down and either work, live, or play. It just isn't. And that's my take on it after having worked down here for over 30 years and coming back after an absence of 2 years. I happen to be talking with another one of our major grantees, Julie Decker, who runs the museum, and she brought it up. She said, my gosh, every morning we're having to go out there in that nice new plaza they put in, all the gorgeous trees, and politely shoo away, wake up and shoo away the folks who are sleeping in the little forest over there. And it's becoming an issue. She said, we're trying to come up with a plan that starts to create more activities happening in that region. We need to get more people, more activities, more things happening, because she's on the other side of C Street. And C Street is kind of the dividing line almost now. I just saw Nancy Harbour walked in. Nancy runs this building that we're all looking at the roof of over here. Another incident, Nancy, I probably never told you this. I went to see a Little Shop of Horrors several months ago, and I'd never seen this happen before. Walking in the door from 6th Avenue, the side door from 5th, I'm sorry, from 5th, right across the street from the Egan Center. Everybody going that night had to literally step over someone who was completely passed out and out of commission. And it was in that Arctic entry area, and I'm going to tell you, your eyes teared. It smelled so bad. So issues of cleanliness, safety, that it's making, bad things are making their way from east to west. And I'm not an expert on city planning, I'm not an expert on what it takes to make that all change, but there are cities that recognize that downtown is the face and the soul of your community. And as people perceive downtown Anchorage, so they perceive Anchorage. Right now, 4th Avenue is like, if there's a face to downtown, that the smile is 4th Avenue. Right now, the 2 front teeth are knocked out. That's the 4th Avenue Theater. Nothing's happening there. It's been a long time. I'd like to see something happen there. Well, what's this building? It looks like a nice building. If the paint's not kept up, the moss is growing on it, it's boarded up. Things like that. Another incident, small. Driving from East Anchorage on 15th west, crossing over A Street. You know that's the public sculpture, the fishing rods? You've all seen that. It's a very cool sculpture. Anybody looked at it lately? It used to look pretty nice. It's totally rusted out. Totally rusted out. I've talked with Anzina Harari, and she is putting a proposal together to the Atwood Foundation tomorrow to see if we can deal with that. That's a small thing, but it's the kind of thing that in aggregate you get the sense that we're not doing all we can do for downtown. That's a long thing, a lot of things to say.
So we've got that. Thank you, Mr. Herman. We have the S version in front of us now. I want to also note for the record we've been joined by Ms. LaFrance and Mr. Weddleton. So I appreciate the description of what motivated this. And I don't know if you or Mr. Gates or Mr. Constant would like to present the actual ordinance language and sort of the legal effect it would have.
Yep. Yeah, I'm prepared for that.
So,
Which one are they gonna bring forward?
S.
S.
Okay.
S. The first one was simply so we could get it on the agenda and have this conversation in a formal way, keep it moving. Ira and I sat together with Julie Decker, who was one of the initiators of this concept, and we started to frame around it what would be important. And this S version, there are already some changes that I'm going to propose in a floor amendment because, every time you read it, you get a little more focused on it. But what we're talking about here is that, go ahead.
Mr. Gates wants to.
I just wanted to say something. The S version apparently isn't on the agenda yet, so it hasn't been submitted. We'll make sure it's on the addendum. We can make changes before the deadline tomorrow.
Perfect. So
Lay on the table usually.
I do have a couple of items that I will change from this version to the following, but I'll be able to go through these right now with you. So we talk in the first whereas that we recognize the beauty of Anchorage and wish to appoint a committee of downtown stakeholders dedicated to the upholding the ideal beauty of the diverse downtown area. That the downtown area is understood as the public face and symbolic center of the community and should be safe, attractive, and desirable. We encourage residential, community, and social activity. Next whereas currently several comprehensive plan elements covering only fractions of this area, including the Anchorage Downtown Comprehensive Plan, the Ship Creek Waterfront Plan, the Fairview Neighborhood Plan, and there are a few others that I'll be adding into that as directed in Title 21 are created through a process of generalized public participation. Next, whereas the plans above do not currently provide for a unifying aspirational vision to develop downtown in an aesthetic manner within the area bounded by Merrill Field to the east, Cook Inlet to the west, Ship Creek to the north, and Chester Creek to the south. That's a broadening of what people would normally conceptualize as the downtown, but it is important to keep that in mind because of everything that's involved in this area. Despite many plans of improvement, these plans do not specifically address the goals of this commission and the ordinance or have become outdated, and there's been stagnation in the visible or organized action encompassing this full area. The next whereas, there are many stakeholders with a shared desire to see real change to infrastructure and aesthetic improvements in the downtown. The next whereas, downtown has been seeing an uptick in crime affecting locals, demoralizing residents, creating the perception of downtown as unsafe and unclean, and causing investors to leave the downtown area, and impacting downtown's character as a social and cultural hub. The next whereas, East Downtown Anchorage has become blighted, and design oversight has been identified as one of the causes for encouraging its spread westward. The spread of blight westward, that is, not the spread of East Downtown. Whereas the next one, the reinvigoration, revitalization of downtown areas is universally recognized as a force to build community character and morale, boost economic development, and as an opportunity to celebrate Anchorage's diverse history. We resolve to create a commission. Now, I've heard lots of chuff on the idea of another commission. Our boards and commissions don't really work that well, I've heard. They're not very well organized, or there's already different groups doing this work. But there isn't another group that's focused specifically on the downtown under our boards and commissions, specifically and only. This commission would have 7 members appointed and confirmed in accordance with Chapter 405, which is the mayor makes the final appointments, but we, in our discussions, would be seeking nominations from downtown stakeholders for who they would like to see participate. It would represent major stakeholders, diverse demographic of downtown Anchorage's businesses and residents, represent organizations who occur localism and are passionate about actionable ideas and who believe in a safe and attractive and desirable downtown. The purpose of the commission, and this is one of the changes I'm going to make, is to have downtown residents, businesses, and organizations come together to request endorsement from the mayor and assembly on solutions related to the safety, infrastructure, aesthetic, and community development needs of the downtown that will support revitalization in the downtown with consideration for its character and future. The commission shall create a unified aspirational vision for the future of downtown to include recommendations for meaningful updates to the comprehensive plan in Title 21. Strategize ways to encourage positive infrastructure and business development towards the East Downtown area with consideration of design standards such as crime prevention through environmental design, form-based code, and I'm going to add here complete streets, Vision Zero, sustainable development, and other strategies. And now this one might be a little too specific, number 3. Encourage public sanitation, infrastructure, and services for tourists and other transit persons. For example, cleaning of public facilities, mobile shower units. Again, we're going to have a such as in there so it's clear that that's not the one item. It's along those lines. identify long and short-term issues in downtown, including strategies to address the matters, advise the mayor and assembly and other boards and commissions as appropriate with a unified message and be a force for action for the downtown, hold special meetings to which a multitude of downtown, and again I add residents, businesses, and organizations, report to the mayor and assembly on the progress of the development of the Anchorage, and I'm going to add downtown Renaissance plan to address the city's revitalization needs on a regularly scheduled basis, and identify opportunities to diversify the downtown economy while planning for equity and access to all residents. Now, on Part C here, this is something Ira and I initially thought of as a very short-term commission. 1 year after its first meeting is impaneled, when they swear in, 12 months, get to work, give us an action plan, don't waste time. We were cautioned that making a code change for a 1-year effort might be a bit of a stretch, but I think Ira and I both would consider a tighter timeline that gives people a mandate for quick action and not something that drags on permanently in perpetuity to become one of those commissions that does nothing good over time. So there's that. And then finally, but it stands to terminate on July 1st of 2021, which is the end of this mayor's term. And that's it. So those are the changes we proposed to the in the S version. The big picture ideas, it's time that we impanel a group of people to really focus their best intentions and effort on the downtown from Ship Creek to Chester Street, from Merrill to the inlet, and come up with a coordinated vision.
All right, thank you, Mr. Constant. Mr. Peterson and Mr. Weddleton, and then I have a little note as well. Go ahead, Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry. For the record, we've been joined by Mr. Croft. Go ahead, Mr. Peterson.
So, are you envisioning that this will be financed privately, or that the municipality will be funding a lot of these changes, or will this be a mixture of both, or where's the money coming from?
Right, so that's a really great question. From the perspective of statement of economic effects, certainly less than $30,000 cost of a commission to do this work. You know, we hear reports of, oh, there's a dozen plans on the shelf, we could just pick one, but none of them are comprehensive. And so the idea of inviting all of these stakeholders to the table, there are already people doing work in the downtown. The idea is to bring together into alignment as many of those efforts as possible to a coordinated vision. So individuals and entities would continue to pay for their own operations in such a way that hopefully complements a coordinated vision.
Mr. Weddleton.
I had a couple things, just questions, but one on that. I've been involved with a couple of these things, and some fairly recently, and if you don't have sort of a dispassionate person who knows how to run a meeting and keep these things rolling, you're going to spin your wheels pretty quick. So you need to figure out $15,000 to $25,000 for someone to staff these meetings and keep everything on track, or you'll go nowhere. So if you don't even have that amount of funding, you're going nowhere. You'll just frustrate these stakeholders. But a couple things, so if we approve this, and I'm not opposed to the idea, I think basically this is what we do. We say, here's an area that wants to do its own plan, and we're doing that. We did that recently for South Addition. I think Girdwood, we blessed their efforts, and we're doing that here. Mountain View did it.
It's different than a neighborhood plan per se, but yes.
But somewhat, that's what you're doing here. It's pretty
Exactly.
in-depth, because you'll look at Title 21 too. But then what we do is I know whereas statements are just kind of out there. But what does blighted mean? What is that defined as?
All you gotta go to-
a definition for blight, and we're saying this meets it?
Go to the Fairview Neighborhood Plan, and in the findings by the Planning and Zoning Commission adopted by the Assembly, it clearly states that there's blight and there's a taking going on by DOT because they won't allow transformation to happen. So it's in the record in our coordinated plans that exist already. A functional definition.
Okay, and then you have the phrase design oversight. What does that mean?
Which line?
Oh, this is page 1, end of 39, starting 40. Design oversight.
Yeah, I think maybe that's a funky term. It's ultimately a failure of planning has led us to where we are in that part of town.
I'd be happy if you change that so it was more clear.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, and in fact, in the Fairview Neighborhood Plan, it clearly states that that is one of the things that's happened, and your planning department will tell you that a failure to plan in that area has created an island of disinvestment. that all feeds into the deterioration, the sense of deterioration of the downtown. 50,000 or 30,000 cars a day drive right through that area, and everyone thinks, oh my God, get me out of here. And so that's what kind of leads to that line.
How's that? Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Littleton. Okay, I had a very, so I'm not sure how we address it exactly. I do have a sense that there are other organizations, namely the Downtown Community Council and the Anchorage Downtown Partnership, and probably some other organizations that you're more familiar with than I am, that would feel like this is duplicating some of their efforts.
And
Now,
a
if you
simple answer to that, their boundaries are narrow and discrete, and they do not deal with the bigger question of all of the neighborhood and all of the elements within it. And in my conversations with the leadership of those organizations, some of them are in flux right now, they understand after having this conversation that they are a part of the solution. They will be members of this committee addressing it.
Well, the commission's only 7 members, so they probably all won't be. But to that point, on A2 here under 300, you said represent a diverse demographic of downtown Anchorage's businesses and residents. Somewhere else you say businesses, organizations, and residents.
Yeah.
And I think
We'll make it
either say
comport.
organization or even nonprofit. I mean, I just
We'll make
there are
it-
several different kinds.
We'll make it parallel.
Yeah, businesses, organizations, and residents. Okay, and
So
Yeah,
you hit
okay.
on a core problem, though, and the core problem, this concept of territoriality, every one of these organizations thinks they're the answer. And to their credit, they're doing a lot of hard work to be the answer for their area. But you just step across C Street or 9th and Gamble, and you're outside of any of those areas. Or, AEDC has a very important role to play, but they're really an economic development organization for the city. ADP is 9th Avenue to 3rd Avenue. Downtown is bigger than that, and the Downtown Community Council is like 1st Avenue to the park strip at 9th Avenue. But there's Fairview Community Council, and there's South Addition Community Council, and even part of Mountain View in that. And so there isn't any one organization that has a sanction on this, except us. We are.
well, I was going to
body.
say the organization. I mean, your whereases make a compelling case that I agree with. The downtown is more than just the problem of downtown, right? The downtown is the face of the whole community, the whole municipality. The whole municipality has a stake in the success of downtown, which also means that the organization that really is responsible for downtown is the Anchorage Assembly.
Yes.
And then the municipality as a whole. It also means that when we're looking at who should sit on this commission, there might be people who have a compelling reason to sit on this commission that are neither a business nor a resident of downtown, that live and even work in UMed, but for whatever reason they feel a particular connection to downtown because, as you've accurately stated, it's relevant for the whole community.
And I would offer that Mr. Perman is a perfect example. He does not live, nor at this point does he work or have an organization in the downtown per se, but he is a stakeholder in this question and has been for 30 years. And so that's a
Yeah.
fair point. And we can broaden that. It's ultimately going to be up to the mayor to make that call,
Right.
because that's how our boards and commissions work.
So this is as we learned today, we're trying to hit these points, but this is a non-exclusive list of the things that the mayor
It
can take into
includes-
account, right? And he could potentially, like, for example, someone from the airport, maybe they want to sit on this for some reason.
Or Merrill-Field.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Trainee was in the
Thank you.
queue.
Chris, I appreciate you doing this. I spent 2 weeks ago, I was in Seattle, downtown Seattle. You need to have a gas mask down there.
What?
Sanitation problem is so bad.
Right.
Pike Street area there, you would not want to be there.
I really enjoyed it. I was there a month ago.
I think you had your Vicks Vapor rub on. Dean, would you check on item 3, encourage public sanitation facility services? There was a Ninth Circuit ruling requiring towns to provide sanitation services for the homeless. Would you check and see if you can figure out what Ninth Circuit ruling that was? I'd appreciate it, because that's going to impact the services we have to provide. At some point in time, somebody's going to push it. I want to see what the ruling was.
Be ready.
I mean, I'm all for making more public bathrooms. If you
Yep.
can do it
And then
affordably.
we have, then you've got problems with maintenance of it, you've got problems with the upkeep, everything else. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
So
Thank you.
Here's the hardest stakeholder to address at this time is the mayor. The mayor has some concerns. They've talked to me about it. They haven't come out and said no. But, so first we have to pass this and convince them it's good, because ultimately if they decide not to implement it, nothing we could do. But my feeling is that the downtown entities, the partnerships, the museums, and the businesses that want to be in a better environment are going to drive this thing into success, into existence, just like in Spinard. It was a handful of very dedicated people who set forth and just would not deviate from that vision, and now it's come to fruition. Right? It's a huge investment and a massive transformation. The question I have for everybody, are we in the sunset of downtown? Or are we in the sunrise of downtown? Because we're either one or the other. We're certainly not in its healthiest time. You know, what is it? It's our choice today to make a push in that direction.
Mr. Rosen?
So what are Chris, can you speak to the administration doesn't like this, we just heard?
I am saying
Someone
like
here
it,
can
I just
say
said
that?
I've had hesitation.
Hesitation?
I
think Chris like it.
Economic Community Development Department, we actually, we applaud the intent. I mean, Ira's impassioned opening monologue was a story that just about everyone will share. We do have some concerns that you guys are articulating right now, and we'll let the Assembly chew on this, because we think some of the concerns that we have about not the intent, but the chosen approach, you'll probably ferret out through this work session. But as it is presented today, it actually presents several layers of challenging implementation to achieve what is a solid vision that we're behind 110%.
Well, what are those challenges?
So specifically, there's the issues that you've just been discussing about overlap and the representation on a board and commission. I think at a base level, the biggest concern is the instrument chosen to realize the vision. In order for an effort like this to truly be representational of the multitude of neighborhoods that actually make up this larger downtown, as described very well by Assemblymember Constant, we're envisioning a vehicle that's a lot more nimble than a Title IV board or commission. As many of you know who have sat on those boards and or commissions, they take a lot of time, energy, and money, as Assemblymember pointed out, to implement and run. They're very formal, they're very structured, and I hate to say it because I am an employee of government, it's sometimes overly bureaucratic. And we think that in reaching out to the many stakeholders that Chris Constant just outlined, the general sense is that they don't like shackles. And we feel, rightly or wrongly, that sometimes the board and or commission process can be a shackle. So taking the intent and the passion and the ideas in this and channeling it into a non-formal or non-formally recognized, at least through code, instrument, we think might actually have a more impactful, might be a more impactful approach.
I have Mr. Croft in the queue, although I want to ask a quick follow-up to that. That would imply us not passing an ordinance then, correct? Or passing an ordinance that doesn't set up a commission?
We're very sensitive to that fact, and so I don't know what the end game would be. We don't want that, we certainly don't want the sponsors to interpret our feelings about this as we don't want to see this ordinance or the intent of this ordinance succeed. I don't have an easy answer, Chair Dunbar, as to what the end game would be of this particular ordinance, but certainly we can talk about options.
Thank you, Mr. Shute. Mr. Croft?
So on the same line, so you think the mayor has the power to do something like this in a more nimble format?
Well, I don't think you should, no offense to my boss, I don't think we should hang our hats solely on the role of the mayor in this process. I mean, this is a community-driven effort. As Chair Dunbar pointed out earlier, this is community councils, this is nonprofit organizations, this is residents and neighbors, and you, of course, assembly members. I think that certainly by channeling this energy, we could recruit people from across the community in a group larger than 7 even, who all really passionately care about this issue as much as you've heard today from assembly members around the room. Whether that's convened by the mayor or convened by the assembly, we're open to ideas, but it probably could be stood up relatively quickly, not be burdened by the processes that exist in Title IV, and be infinitely more successful.
So you have the power to do that. Is the mayor interested in doing that?
Absolutely, yeah. We're, like I said, we're 110% behind the vision and the idea and the passion that you've heard today. And if that's the direction that the assembly would go, we'd be ready to stand that up instantaneously.
Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, looking at this from a, say, a 10,000-foot view, I think most of us would agree that there's some laudable goals here. It's obviously, when you get down, it's the devil's in the details, as they say, and then when you create the commission, it becomes personality driven, depending on who's on that commission, and so it has challenges. I agree with the goal. I've been saying for years that east downtown, the further east you get, the more redevelopment or development that is needed. But I just don't know if redesigning things would solve it. Maybe it would help, but I don't know if we can engineer our way out of this, so to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. I've got Chris and then Dick. Go ahead, Mr. Costa.
I have been hearing for years, we're gonna focus on this area, and we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do this, as an administrative function, years, long before this mayor, and as long as this mayor's been mayor, and his team, and long on opportunities and short on doing something. And I think the impulse here is to kickstart something into happening. And it's not about creating a new plan that will be all and end all, that's gonna spurt the total transformation. That takes time. Anybody who's involved in this process knows. But it is a commitment that I'm asking for, that Mr. Perman is asking for, and that I think the downtown is asking for from this body, to make this area a focal point. At least give us a year, give us 2 years to pull this thing together and get a vision developed. And I hear this idea about nimbleness, and I would be very welcome to, in the next 24 hours, hearing a model of how that would work in an ordinance, because we have that long to get an item on the addendum. But something at this time is better than nothing.
Okay, I have Mr. Train and Mr. Weddleton.
Chris, just one thing, if you're gonna do this, make sure you get the names to the administration, because I've heard committee after committee complaining about lack of staff. The vacancies are not being filled, to the point that some commissions can't even meet because they don't have a quorum. So if you're gonna do this, make sure you give the administration the names.
We would
So
nominate.
there's no place, no way they say we don't have the people. to
There's
put
that,
on there.
and I believe it will be self-funded by the stakeholders. And
But I just wanna make sure it's fully manned.
I have heard interest in parties in being investors in this issue.
I appreciate your goal to 7, because I'm told the administration's gonna push to go from 9 down to 7, because some of the bigger commissions have 9, they can't get that many people to show up.
We imagine dozens of people will participate because there are many stakeholders in the downtown.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee. Mr. Weddleton.
You know, one side, I mean, you've got the aspirational stuff here, I guess, but, you know, Title 21 was passed many years ago. But we left downtown with the old code, and it gets a little awkward sometimes, like when we do the marijuana code, we have to amend both the new and the old code because of that, and that's been sitting there for years. Chris, is there any kind of track for getting that downtown Title 21?
Yeah,
in the
through the chair,
full
there is a developed work plan for what's called the Title 21, downtown Title 21 code updates. The downtown comprehensive plan, that Assemblymember Costa referred to earlier, was the initial step in that project. It was more of the aspirational visionary component, and what was destined to follow was the actual rewriting of the code provisions that pertain to the downtown zoning districts. A lot of you remember that happened right at the tail end of one mayor's administration. A new administration came in, and reworking all of Title 21 became the focus. And that sub-chapter of Title 21 that deals specifically with the downtown zoning districts was put aside until a later date. So we have developed a work plan to actually pick that work back up and continue it. Unfortunately, because so much time has lapsed, what would have been a quicker and easier process if it had been followed through in 2007 is now probably a year to a year and a half long process and probably 3 times as expensive.
Can I follow up on that?
Yeah, Mr. Weld.
You know, there's a mention in here, but we weren't really thinking form-based code when we did Title 21, but that's kind of all in vogue now. And if ever it's appropriate, it would be parts of downtown. So it's almost good that we waited. If we can try that in this area, but the area we're trying it would be the area, I think, defined here.
That's correct.
So I think the area here in that aspect of this is very important. So is there, I mean, how far along are you? Because I'd like to coax that along. And if this does that, then I'm all on board. If you've already got,
Yeah,
6
yeah,
months
it's-
we'll see something, or 4?
I'm sorry, what?
We're gonna see something in 6 months, 12?
No, so, as I mentioned, unfortunately, because so much time has elapsed, you're right about your comment on it's almost a blessing in a way that you did because so much has changed between 2007 and now. It's like skipping a generation of iPhone. You get a whole new phone and then you do new things. So the downside of that is that it's actually a year to a year and a half long project as currently scoped and approximately $565,000. That is not what the price would have been if we had done it right the first time, which is at the conclusion of 2007.
I like his self-funded thing better than that.
Yeah, but that's a different question.
Let me ask a follow-up on that then. This $565,000, is that built, is that in one of our budgets? Is that coming down the pike?
Not yet, because much like some of the responses recognize, there is significant community interest in that finished product. And it is our hope that we will find ways to partner with private sector businesses to help partially at least fund that. That's a heavy ask, I think, for a plan. We recognize that, but a lot of people have a lot at stake in the outcome. So we think it could be successful as a joint partnership.
Okay. Mr. Wow, okay, that's it. I have a queue here, sorry. Oh, it's me in the queue. I'm good. Anybody else want?
Yeah, I just-
Go ahead, Mr. Constant.
Again, I think Mr. Schutte, you hit on the core point. 2007, a document was designed, was a visionary document, but it is no longer the vision. And I'm not asking through this to have a complete revision of the downtown comprehensive plan and a complete revision of Title 21 and all of those things. What I'm asking for is to formally bring together the stakeholders of the downtown, formally do it in such a way that the question is asked, who are we and what do we want to be? And this is the format to do that, unless they surprise me with a conversation in the next 24 hours with an amendment to this that could be supported that will achieve the same goal of bringing together all these people. And it's not something that I would be comfortable shifting off to the Live, Work, Play Committee, because they have a very particular focus, and their focus is, while it's great, it is not at all what the downtown is about. They're just one part of that.
So I remember.
Let me add to that real quick, because I didn't do a good job of explaining it. The Title 21, the actual code writing that I described, is not solely what will take so long and what will cost so much money. We're very cognizant of the fact that 2007, I didn't think I could carry a computer in my pocket. In 2018, I've got a supercomputer in my pocket. That plan, that work plan that we put together actually includes an update to the downtown comprehensive plan itself. So as Assemblymember Constant described it, we will be going back out to the community and asking that question again. Is 2007's dream of downtown still valid in 2018? And where it's not, let's make updates to the plan itself and then follow with the real code.
Thank you, Mr. Trudy. So I remember why I put myself in the queue. So you keep talking about 24 hours before we get comments to this ordinance, but I mean
From the administration.
From the administration, I understand that Mr. Perman has certain time constraints, but I don't think, with respect to Mr. Perman, I don't think that this body should be necessarily cabined by those. That if this is going to be a rather large and ambitious project, as I think it is, I would consider pushing off until the meeting of the 28th, for example, or even we're talking about a 2-year project or a 3-year project potentially.
I hope 12 months, but.
Even if it was 12 months, then then it's not a big deal to me if we were to wait an extra 2 weeks or even 4 weeks on the front end to try to do it right. And maybe we'll all feel comfortable and want to pass it on Tuesday, but maybe we'll have to push it off till the 28th. And then I don't know, Lisa, could I change the agenda to give Mr. Perman a chance to vote on this on the 28th before we swear in, or is that taken out of our hands?
You can do whatever you want.
Well, I don't know if I want to do that. So, but the point is, so Mr. Herman, you might not get the chance to vote on your own vision.
We can
Maybe
invite
you
to
will.
testify.
You
Yeah.
might be part of it.
Well,
You might be on the commission.
That's,
You can
and
just switch jobs.
actually fun. In fact, I have a question that I told him I was gonna ask him. Are you prepared, after all this is done, to help lead in this?
Well, I would be certainly eager to be available to, but under this particular proposal, the mayor has to, we can, as an assembly, recommend, the mayor's gonna make the decision. I'd be available.
Just say yes. huh?
Just say
yes.
And my only fear about waiting is that there are many forces who have a stake in this, who are just happy how things are. And I think we need to light some fires, and this is a fire we can light. And send a signal to the downtown and to the city at large that it's time to bring all eyes to the downtown and fix this mess we've allowed to grow. And this is one of the tools, what Mr. Schuette's talking about, it's absolutely essential. That's a much bigger project than what this does. This would inform that question formally.
Thank you,
It
Mr.
will be on the
Cox.
agenda on.
Ms. LaFrance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, assuming this would pass, how much time does it take to get a commission up and running? And I understand that would depend on
Right.
what the mayor would choose to do, and then
So-
the second part would be the financing piece for staffing.
Right, and so, generally speaking, it would be a small staffing amount depending on the body of work, but I am certainly ready to go talk with the businesses and foundations in the downtown area. And from a perspective of how long it takes to get up, the thought that we had settled on was that the commission sunsets 12 months from the day it gavels in, right? That way, everybody is sworn in, then you've got 12 months to get to work. We don't set a sunset date that just starts diminishing to 0 before we get a panel set up, but in fact, the clock starts the day they swear in and say, we are here. So that, as long as it takes, it's fine in that framework.
Mr. Weddleton.
You know, you had mentioned the Spinard effort, so I was thinking on that, you know, we made a Spinard Chamber of Commerce and just kind of all got together and we did it. We didn't need government blessing. Why would we? And got together, discussed the issues and continue to. And I mean, why not just do that? Is pick a club name, create that club, and they all get together.
An Anchorage Chamber of Commerce.
Spinard is, go figure. Spinard is actually a much more compact strip. It's really the strip that runs along Spinard Road.
No, it's not. It is Arctic all the way to.
You're right.
Brevard again, and then we defined it that way.
But as an
quite
investment
large.
zone, where's the money going?
Well, for now, but you got fire. I mean, this is a long-term thing. But I'm just kind of wondering, why go to other?
Because-
What do you gain by having this blessed by the city? Not really, as opposed to just them getting together and doing it on their own, and then advising the effort that Chris might do in a year or so.
Ms. LaFrance and Mr. Herman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, just following up on John's point, I mean, is that something maybe that this, and I don't know if it's too much to have create a commission to decide whether or not there should be a commission? But I mean,
That's not a committee.
but I mean, to, you know, look into something like, with these goals, or this unification be best taken on by, you know, something different than this commission? I don't know.
I think the answer to that is what it produces, the recommendations, then this body would have before it a decision to make on what to do. I don't understand it.
Yeah, Mr. Herman.
I do feel kind of guilty here. I have been pushing this thing pretty hard. And what's most important to me, and I believe to Christopher also, is that what we come up with works. That's the best way forward. I have felt, the press of the calendar might be extremely short term, and have shortcutted what I think would have been efforts to reach out, particularly to the administration, to get their input onto this earlier. I was going to ask Chris if you might comment or speculate. Would it be possible to meet with the administration within the next few weeks to massage something that we all agree is workable, and then maybe be ready to bring that to the meeting on the 28th. I won't be voting on it, but I'd sure love to be part of the conversation that gets it forward, something that's really workable. I believe the administration is absolutely 110%. something in this. And we'll move that forward. And I feel better that if they weren't involved in this, and I want the buy-in. You guys know what you're doing. So that, Chris, if that's,
Yeah, it's fine. We can get it introduced with S version tomorrow and then.
Well, it's not just introduced, set a public
Friday,
hearing, right?
And set the public hearing for the 28th. And then come up with another draft that operates closer to the shared vision.
Comment on that, if you fully expect there will be another version, I would just say skip this S version and wait, because then you have S1, S2, and it just confuses.
Yeah, that's
Hmm.
fine too. That's fine too.
So we could let the regular version hit our agenda, have public hearing on it, close public hearing, and then.
I would just say.
Or not even close public hearing.
Move the public hearing out to.
Extend it to the 28th, have the opportunity to sub in a different version. Okay. Any other, we have 15 minutes left.
I may take you up on the offer to change the agenda, so.
So I reckon, if it's legal.
Yeah. I may take you up on that, but that's a separate.
I don't
issue.
know how bound by the election results and our prior resolutions on that we are, but I'll talk to the clerk about it.
I think it's the attorneys you may talk to.
Yeah. And I mean, you could also just start lobbying this Quinn Davidson. So any other thoughts on this item?
Let's light a fire of growth in the downtown.
That will burn our enemies to the ground. Okay. Okay. All right. With that, this work session is adjourned.